Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben, this is Books with Benghis Khan, and today I have for you my favorite books of the first half of 2023. I was going to try to make a ranked top 10 list, but then it was going to become a Brian Lee Durfee top 10 list where I put in a lot more, and I couldn't even figure out how to rank them because I just loved all of these so much, and so I'm going to go through them alphabetically, and God bless future me trying to put together a ranked top 10 list at the end of this year, and hopefully I'll have a bunch more contenders. So I don't even know how I'm going to possibly do that, but I do just want to gush about all of my favorite reads of the first 6 months. So I'll try to go through them kind of lightning quick, so this won't end up taking too long. So first is Ashes of Man by Christopher Ruocchio. That is book 5 in the Sun Eater saga. We have just 2 more books left to go in the series. At this point, it's so tense. Everything that's happening is so meaningful. I'm so invested in these characters' journeys. This book was really focused around a very tense kind of action standoff, and the plotting was so tight. Just really loved the faster action scenes in this series, but also the slower kind of character-based moments with long conversations. Just love it. Inject it all into my veins. Sun Eater, one of my favorites. Ashes of Man, just crushing it. And yeah, can't wait for the next installment. Then is A Clash of Kings, book 2 in A Song of Ice and Fire. So I have been reading through these books for my first time. I watched through the show a few years ago, and I read Game of Thrones at the end of last year and really loved that, or else it'd be on this list too, if it was part of this year. But book 2, Clash of Kings, I have heard so little hype for it over the years because, people talk about Storm of Swords being their favorite book in the series, one of their favorite books of all time. And the fact that comes right after Clash of Kings, I think it's really overshadowed this book and how awesome it was, because the Tyrion focus we got was just so engaging. Different new locations, the prologue and Dragonstone, just amazing. There's not a single complaint I had about this one, and it might be, with the 4 novels that I've read so far, might be my favorite of the bunch. Still got 1 to go, but it's a close call between all of them for sure. Speaking of A Song of Ice and Fire, the next one is A Feast for Crows, one that I finished most recently, and that is book 4 in A Song of Ice and Fire. And this was a massive surprise because it is often spoken of with some derision, or at least as a lower tier along with Dance with Dragons than the other ones, but I ended up loving it. The slower, deeper character things we had going on just felt really suitable after the craziness of A Storm of Swords. Loved the kind of stronger focus around a few of the POVs, and some of the new locations we got to, just awesome. So yeah, loved A Feast for Crows. Next up, just by chance, is another George R. R. Martin book, and that is Fire and Blood. So I fell in love with this book. I read it almost kind of grudgingly because I loved the first season of House of the Dragon. I just wanted to kind of read through the end of that story so I didn't have to wait so many years to see how that all played out. And so I ended up reading from the beginning, and I got so immersed in this whole fantastical history book in a way that I just did not expect to. There's so many amazing gory details about the history of Westeros. Martin had me glued to the page here, and I just did not expect that with Fire and Blood. So if he ever decides to write volume 2 of that, I am here for it. Now that we've left the F's behind, maybe you can predict what's coming. Some things that might start with J, and that is Jade Legacy. Recently finished this one, and it was a spectacular finale to this trilogy that was so engaging, got me really invested. Just a great overall time that I had with it. And Jade Legacy, with all of its time skip, still felt like a really seamless, single, cohesive narrative, and fully just along for the ride. Did not know where it was going, could not predict all the little twists and turns in the plot. I love the tight plotting where all these different little threads had ended up getting all tied together in the main storyline, and loved where it all ended up, and just very satisfying conclusion. Now, going alphabetically, I guess, is a little awkward because now I have to mention Jade War, which I probably, out of the whole trilogy, was my favorite of the bunch. Just jumped right into the middle of the events. That, after what took place in Jade City, I was already invested. I knew everything that was going on with the world building. But I loved the expansion we got into Espenia. Loved that whole plot with that POV character that went there. And everything was just completely immersive and engaging. So this is the kind of read where I just, again, have absolutely no complaints. Loved it all the way through from the first page to the end. What a great middle book. Moving on from the Jays, we are into Leviathan Falls. So I finished up the last bunch of Expanse books in the start of this year. I think just the last three. And the finale was extremely satisfying. It was a different feeling book than a lot of the others, kind of slower paced, maybe more focused around the themes and a lot of the characters' journeys, and so it was less about tense plotting and action than some of the previous ones, and it felt like a really suitable conclusion for the whole series. Very thought-provoking, and I was utterly engrossed in this finale. So, a wonderful last book, book number 9 of The Expanse by Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham. Yeah, got that right. The next letter is M, and I had an all-time great read here with Mad Ship. That's book 2 in the Live Ship Traders. So it definitely took me a little time to get into the Live Ship series. The Ship of Magic is a very slow build, and by the end, though, I was so hooked. And then Ship of Magic took off running with where we left off. It just got me so invested in all of the different POV characters and the overarching plotting of the series. Some amazing, kind of really cathartic events and tense plotting and convergences happen in this book. Just everything I love about epic fantasy. And yeah, another wonderful book 2 of a trilogy. Jumping over a lot of letters to the P's, we have another, well, maybe possibly all-time great read, and that is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I've been gushing about this book for the last bunch of months. Yeah, it was a magical, transporting read, and was not the kind of slow, dense, philosophically minded vibes book that I was expecting. It was just really easy to sink into the plotting, the POV character, the narrator I felt was really relatable in certain ways and easy to empathize with. Just, yeah, loved it and loved the mystery aspect, the unfolding of it all. What a great book. Can't wait to reread it. Then to the R's, there's a bit of a theme in this list, which is great book 2s. And I absolutely loved Red Seas Under Red Skies by Scott Lynch. This was a fantastic surprise. After really not loving everything about the Lies of Locke Lamora, this book had been sitting on my shelf for a few years, and I figured I'll give this series one last hurrah to see if it could be for me. And I ended up loving it, getting so into the really friend relationship at the core of the story. And the plotting, though, really hooked me. The sea nautical setting, maybe that's also a theme of this first half of the year. But I loved the prose, the cleverness, the wit. Maybe since I was into the plotting and the characters, I could really appreciate the wit of the writing. And yeah, just ended up really loving it and can't wait to continue that series. Now we venture into the S's with a book that really transported me and got me so emotionally engaged. That was The Severing Sun by Vaughn Roycroft. So this is just a fast-paced, historical feeling fantasy, kind of in the mold of John Gwynn's Faithful and the Fallen. Just got very attached to the two main characters. They had a very just innocent, supportive dynamic that I really loved. The action here was breathless. Just so much that engaged me with this one. Next is Sharpe's Honor. That's book number 16 out of about 23 Richard Sharpe books by Bernard Cornwell. So this is Napoleonic War era historical fiction. So it's the odd one out here with all the rest being SFF books. But this one is one of my favorites in the whole series. I've read a whole bunch last year and this year, and I still have a few more to go. But this is just a prototypical Sharpe book with a really suspenseful kind of fictional plot that Sharpe gets embroiled in, but also a really tense, interesting historical battle scene as well. So this is part of the war that's taking place in Portugal and Spain. and it's one of my favorite from this whole part of the war and the series. Just absolutely love the main character, Sharp. Rupert Farley's audiobook and audio narration in general is some of the best I've ever heard. Just so engaging, and yeah, this series is an all-time favorite. Then there is Ship of Destiny. So this was another fantastic series finale, just gripped to this one from the first page to the last. And everything played out in such an unpredictable way, just so invested in these characters, and the plotting was just airtight, just again, spectacular, and everything I would have hoped for out of this series I got, so, and more. Yeah, and speaking of, I am also putting Ship of Magic on this list. So for a while, I was not thinking I was going to give this one 5 stars, just because I did take a while to get really gripped, maybe a couple hundred pages in, until I started to feel more grip to the plotting and care about these character arcs and the new setting. But once I was there, man, was I so invested, and the ending of this book just was one of the greatest fantasy book climactic sections and ending sections I've read, I feel. So based on that strong ending, I gave it 5 stars, and so every book in this trilogy ended up on this list of my favorite books of the year. Still not out of the S's because there is A Storm of Swords. Yeah, I ended up loving this one. I can see where all the hype comes from. I maybe didn't have as spectacular a time with it as many other people because spoilers, I think, definitely do heavily affect my engagement and enjoyment of books. And because there were so many hugely important dramatic moments for the whole series that happened in this book that I knew were going to be coming, I think that did kind of spoil the excitement and tension in my read. And I was definitely maybe just able to pick out a lot of foreshadowing, which was nice, but it was not on the kind of edge of my seat like I really love to be with my favorite reads. And maybe I even remembered less of the details of what was going to happen in Game of Thrones, Clash of Kings. Feast for Crows also has a lot of differences. So I felt like this is almost like a reread, even though it was my first time. So still loved it. It is still awesome. The writing quality is superb, and the multiple climactic kind of sequences and events are just mind-blowing. I just wish I had read these all before watching this show. Now into the tease for the last 2 of my favorites, and these 2 really are some of my favorites of the year. This is Tiamat's Wrath, the penultimate Expanse novel, Book 8 by James S. A. Corey. This one leads into the slower, deeper Leviathan Falls with an absolute tense roller coaster ride with lots of action, a suspenseful plot that just carries you along with such crazy amounts of tension and resolves in an unpredictable but really satisfying way. Just the new character that we get in here that we really spend a lot of time with, their POV was awesome. Man, I loved everything about this book and read it in just a couple days because I could not stop reading. So yeah, amazing concluding trilogy for The Expanse. And the last 2 books, definitely some of my favorites in the series. And finally, with Tress of the Emerald Sea, this list comes to an end. Read this one somewhat recently, and it was just a delight reading from the beautiful deluxe edition that came from the Kickstarter. The art in there was incredible, added to my experience. I enjoyed doing it immersively with Michael Kramer's audio. It's just a really delightful story with an unpredictable plotting, just very tight plotting as well, with foreshadowing of certain things that ended up getting revealed and that just were great Sanderson reveals, and really creative, fun new Cosmere world building, and side characters that I also grew attached to, and that in the classic Sanderson way all kind of play a role with their individual skills and with their personalities, that different side characters ended up being crucial to how things played out. I love that, and yeah, the book was a delight. So there we go. There were my favorite books from the first half of the year. Let me know what some of your favorites have been so far this year. And yeah, I just do not know how I'm going to pare this down into a top 10, especially if there are some more great reads in the second half of the year. I do not envy my future self with that task. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you later.